Hey guys, I'm here doing my unboxing and review of the Cooler Master Seidon 120V liquid CPU cooler. I picked this up off Newegg for about $50 minus a $20 mail-in rebate, so it's only about $30. It's pretty comparable to the Hyper 212 Evo air cooler, but from what I've seen, this cooler will work much better than any air cooler that's in that price range. A little bit about system that this is going on. I have a AMD A10-5800K processor and integrated GPU. I'm not using any graphics card, so the GPU is still going to be powered. This cooler will support a whole bunch of different sockets. You might want to know is 155 or LGA 155, FM2+, FM2, and AM3+. So basically all your AMD FX processors. I think the highest I would probably use this cooler on would be about an i5. If you're spending $300 on a processor, you probably want to spend a little bit more than $50 on a cooler. So yeah, on this side, gives you some of the specs. Fan noise about 19 to 40 decibels, will change depending on the load. This is a 120mm single radiator, and it comes with a single fan. But from what I've seen, this will be probably better than any air cooler you can probably get anywhere near this price. On the back, it says pure copper water block, microchannel technology, factory filled and sealed, durable, and powerful water pump. Dissipate heat effectively and maintains temperature through water circulation. Not really anything on the bottom or top, so we can go ahead and open this. There. So this is a water block. It's pretty heavy. Let's look at this hardware first. So this is all your mounting brackets for your different processors. And that later. I think it comes with included thermal paste also, and all the screws and stuff you're probably going to need for that. And here's the fan. This is the big, I think it's 120mm fan. Cooler Master includes with it. So that's what goes on there. You should be able to replace this with maybe a Corsair SP120 if you really wanted to. I'm probably going to test it out, see if I like this one or not first. This is some kind of instruction booklet. Yeah, there you go. Intel instructions. Someone said they aren't very good, but these don't look that bad compared to the ones that came on my motherboard, at least. Yeah, it shows you how to put on all that stuff. I don't think those are too bad. So here's the radiator. It's a little bigger than I thought, maybe. There's that way. You can see aluminum fins. It goes all the way through. Not bad. You can see it's all copper. It's got some proprietary screws in there so you don't mess with it and take the water out. From the pictures I've seen though, basically on the other side of this, there's these really, really tiny copper fins that are really fine, which will help with heat dissipation. Okay, this must be the connector for your CPU fan. This will probably power your pump that's inside here. And let's see, the hoses. Pretty flexible. They're not the best, quality rubber hoses, but since you're not going to be moving it back and forth much, it should be fine. These must take a little bit of effort to turn, but they will turn, and they're not going to move once you turn them. So, and apparently there's a blue LED that sits in here too. This will probably be good for me since my case is pretty cheap and didn't have room for a dual radiator. It's like the 240mm long ones. This is definitely going to be better than any box stock air cooler that comes with anything. Even those probably expensive Intel ones that I wouldn't recommend this on, it's probably better than those air coolers. Something I would recommend this on, probably the FX4, FX600, X6000 processors, the AMD A10s, probably an Intel i3, i5, and also that new Intel Pentium G3 258, something like that. That overclockable one, that dual core, this would probably be perfect for that. You can probably get some good temps out of that with this one. I'm going to be doing some temperature things here soon and compare the stock ones to what it looks like after this. Alright, so this is my temperature testing setup for my CPU. I'm using AMD Overdrive to monitor the temperature. The reason I use this one is because this is the most accurate one for the thermal margin, which, if you don't know about AMD, that basically tells you the temperature difference between the max temperature that AMD allows and the current CPU temperature. So for in this instance, it's not very accurate at idle, but this would be 70 degrees Celsius below the maximum temperature that AMD allows. I will be using the logging function to find the minimum thermal margin, which would be the highest temperature. To stress the CPU, this is a little weird, but I'm using the GPU stress test, but I'm using the CPU burner function right here. I've tried using Prime 95 and also the Overdrive stability test, and none of them even get close to the temperature that this one puts my CPU at. Also, just for a side, I'm using GPU-Z to log the GPU temperature also, because if you're using the integrated graphics like I am, you want to keep this also low. So I'm just going to go ahead and start this, and also start logging. And you can see they're starting to drop. I'll probably cut back once it gets to a very high temperature, and so you don't have to sit here and watch this. Okay, so I think I've hit my equilibrium now. About my minimum thermal margin was about 8.8 degrees Celsius, which is pretty hot. Down here at the GPU temp, we got about 76 degrees Celsius, and considering that the GPU load is 0% the whole time, that's pretty high. So, if you're playing games and your CPU is taking up all the heat from your GPU, you're not going to be able to maybe overclock your GPU core as much as you'd like, because your CPU is taking up all the heat. You can kind of hear my fan is kind of going pretty heavy. This is just a stock cooler right here, and I only got that one fan, and that's it, no case fans. So I'll just kind of leave this here for a little bit, and then maybe later you can switch back, and I'll show you how quiet the CPU cooler is compared to what it is right now. Okay, so now I'm using the Formark GPU tool to see what the temperature on my GPU will be this way. Down here on CPU or GPU-Z, it says my max temp was about 71 degrees Celsius, which we were getting over 75, 76 just on the CPU stress test without stressing the GPU at all. So really what this tells me is if you want to keep your GPU core cool and maybe overclock the frequency a little bit, what you're going to need to do is get a CPU cooler just to keep the CPU temps down overall. For some reason this is a pretty heavily single-threaded app, because my one core right here is running 100% the whole time, and that's probably what's contributing to a lot of the heat that's coming out right now. Okay guys, so here it is installed. First thing you'll probably notice is my placement. Learn from my mistakes and make sure your radiator fits in your case, because I did not check that. I would much prefer to put it up there right where it would go, but it did not fit at all. So I had to move it down here. I'm doing it in push right now, so it's pushing out the bottom, which seems like it might not work, but if you look, there's a decent amount of space under there. For noise, this thing's pretty quiet right now. The fan's barely making any noise. If I stop it, it makes the same noise. So yeah, it's pretty quiet. The thing that makes the most noise probably is the pump. I would say it's about the same amount of noise as a hard drive, as a physical hard drive like this one right here. When I first got it, it kind of was making that hard drive sound like there was kind of like gravel in or something, but I think it was just air bubbles, and I think they worked themselves out, so it's not making that noise anymore. Probably one of the more surprising things is actually my CPU is actually running at 100% right now, using that CPU stress test I had. It was that quiet, and all 4 cores are running at 100%. So I think that's pretty nice compared to my other one, which sounded like a jet. The other problem I gotta say is I started trying to overclock this a little bit, and since my VRMs right here, they don't have any heat sinks on them, so they get really hot. The thing about the old CPU cooler was it pushed air straight onto the motherboard right down here, and so the air spread out across the whole motherboard and cooled everything. I don't have that anymore, so those VRMs get pretty hot. I started overclocking it to about 4.4 gigahertz, and the motherboard started limiting the voltage. Like it was sitting at 1.4, 1.375 volts, and it dropped to 0.8 for like a second, and then go back up for a little bit, and then drop to 0.8 for a second. And I'm pretty sure that was trying to keep those cold. And the way I checked this was I unplugged the fan for the CPU cooler, because I only have one fan header, which is retarded. But I unplugged it, put a little tiny fan here, held it with my hand, and as soon as I put that fan there, the voltage stopped dropping. So that about covers noise, physical. Installation, other than my case problems, was pretty good. These are kind of stiff. Now I look at them, like I was trying to move it over to fit in here and up here, and like the cable is really stiff, and then like just trying to twist it into this spot was pretty hard. But I mean, obviously it fits, and I think it would fit anywhere you want to go. It feels a little uncomfortable to twist them that much. These screws right here, when you screw it on, they're only threaded a certain distance, so you can't over tighten this down. You'll tighten it as far as you can, and then that'll be as tight as it'll go, and it won't be pushing super hard on CPU. It'll just be pushing against those threads that aren't there anymore. The one thing I don't really like is this blue LED. I think it looks really terrible. It says in black, which you can't really see, it says Cooler Master right here. I think it would have been nicer if they would have just left that, but that blue LED just looks dumb because there's all this weird, like, I don't even know what that is in there. So on to temperatures. Right now we're running that same CPU burner thing, and my minimum temperature was 34.88 degrees, and that is a high thermal margin compared to the 8.8 I had before. So I'm pretty impressed with this thing, especially how freaking quiet it's running right now. The fan's not even trying, honestly. So we got probably, what was that, 16 degrees lower, something like that. So that's pretty good. The GPU down here, the highest it got was 53 degrees compared to 76, so it's taking a lot of heat out of that CPU. In conclusion, basically, I would recommend this cooler to someone that's on a budget, considering I got it for $30, maybe you can get it for $50 if you can't get the rebate. People that are constrained by space, because some people, especially me, are not going to be able to fit a whole double radiator in their case. Maybe you're trying to make a smaller case, this would be good for you. People that want quiet on a budget, also this is pretty quiet. If you want it to be even quieter, maybe think about changing the fan over. Not really much you can do about the pump, even though it's making a decent amount of noise compared to the other thing, but both of them combined are way less than the stock CPU cooler. I would say for the processors, you could probably almost do anything, honestly. Now that I started using it, I've never even got above, or I should say below, the 20 degrees thermal margin, even when I was overclocking it. And now I've run into other bottlenecks that aren't the CPU cooler, like the VRM's cooler. Maybe even if you did have an i7 and you just wanted, a cheap cooler that's way better than the stock cooler, you can get this. But thanks for watching. If you have any suggestions of what I could do differently on the next video, or any different products you want me to review or something, let me know in the comments.